Hi, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for coming tonight to celebrate the 7th Waterston Desert Writing Prize. We're at lucky number 7. I'm Dana Whitelaw, the Executive Director of the High Desert Museum. Thank you so much for being here. Importantly, the museum sits in and shares the stories of what was, is, and always will be the Indigenous Plateau. We are so pleased that you could join us in the virtual world. Thank you for celebrating the Waterston Desert Writing Prize and how it speaks to the core of the museum's mission, bringing awareness and wonder about the high desert landscape and desert landscapes really writ large. For some of the museum's audience, the arts, the literary arts in particular, are the avenue of choice for exploring, learning about, and appreciating deserts. The museum is dedicated to creating dialogue and conversation and literature, and literature is such a rich starting point for this endeavor. Honoring individuals for their literary contributions extends our impact and brings awareness to the broad scope of the work that takes place here at the museum, as well as out in our regional community of the high desert, and bringing attention to the unique role of deserts in our world. One of the components that I have loved with this prize is how our writers have expanded the borders of how we think about deserts. Like I mentioned before, the prize is in its 7th year, and the museum has been a proud partner since it began. The prize has a unique history of starting with the founder's vision, Ellen Waterston, and an enthusiastic and supportive board, and it was adopted by the museum last year in 2020. We are very proud to continue the prize's vision and its inspiring mission. On behalf of the board of the High Desert Museum, we are very grateful to the Waterston Desert Writing Prize Advisory Committee and for their thoughtful stewardship of this literary celebration and for giving the museum the opportunity to continue its important impact. I also want to thank Playa, the Artist and Scientist Residency Organization that's nestled on the edge of Summer Lake, and the Charles Redd Center for Western Studies for their support of this evening. This promises to be a lovely evening delving into desert writing, and to get things started, it is my great pleasure to welcome award-winning author and poet and founder of the prize, a cultural advocate in many realms, and author of an amazing new book, Walking the High Desert, Ellen Waterston, to continue the program for this evening.
Well, thank you, Dana. And I'm going to sound a little bit like an echo, repeating and reinforcing much of what Dana has just said. Welcome to everybody. Welcome one and all. And thank you, Dana, inspiration, mentor, and friend to me. What a wild and crazy trip this last year has been. But one giant swath of glittery silver lining is that the fits and starts have further strengthened the alliance of the Waterston Desert Writing Prize and the High Desert Museum. So many changes and adaptations, not the least of which is that the awards were obliged to go virtual this year, and the overall schedule returned to this one day, not the new exciting look of 2 days that the museum plans to make a permanent feature of future award ceremonies. But all these best laid plans, contractions, shifts, and redos were consistently countered with the goodwill, attention, and support of the High Desert Museum and its staff. So I'd like to just offer a special thank you to Dana Whitelaw, Heidi Hagemeyer, Becca Berta, and Kyle Kozma, who have made lemonade out of every change in circumstance. The mutual admiration society between the prize and the museum has, as Dana mentioned, been going on since the prize started 7 years ago, with the museum annually hosting the award ceremonies. And in 2021, the prize and associated events and activities were officially adopted by the High Desert Museum. As Dana said at the time, the museum creates experiences that remind us that we each value beauty, wonder, and a common future. The Waterston Prize is one of those experiences, bringing attention to deserts regionally and worldwide. Indeed, the prize's goal of annually awarding a nonfiction work in progress that recognizes the vital role deserts play globally in the ecosystem and the human narrative, with the desert as both subject and setting, is the literary complement to the museum's mission. Personally, I feel very, very lucky that the prize has a home at this national treasure of a natural and cultural history museum. Others in the region and beyond feel the same. The adoption of the prize by the museum has prompted interest, as evidenced by broader support from foundations, businesses, and individuals, and growth, such as the planned expansion of the annual awards program to 2 days to include featured readers and associated activities on the second day, and the exploration of all the ways the literary arts can enliven conversations about nature and culture relative to the museum's existing programs and initiatives. Make no mistake, the original pace and trendsetters for the prize's mission, vision, financial support, and engagement are the former board of the Waterston Prize, now the advisory committee. Heartfelt thanks to Julia Kennedy Cochran, Jim Cornelius, Bart Eberwein, Louise Hawker, Ted Haynes, Gail Hill, Les Joslin, Dick Linford, and Jeff Triance. Writers all, in addition to their role as preliminary judges each year, this year whittling down submissions to the final 3 for Elizabeth Woody, the guest judge, this year to award winner and finalists. They also aided the transition to the museum while also providing financial support. Thanks again to one and all, to each of you. And now back to Dana and on with the show.
Thank you, Ellen. It's such an honor to work with you on this project. Tonight, we're very honored to welcome our 2021 Waterston Desert Writing Prize guest judge, Elizabeth Woody. Elizabeth is a member of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. She is of Yakama Nation descent and is born for the Bitterwater clan of the Navajo Nation. And I'm going to spend just a little bit of time talking about Elizabeth. She's one of our treasured partners at the museum. Elizabeth is the executive director of the marvelous Museum of Warm Springs, which I hope you all have the opportunity to visit. Liz and her museum are, like I said, a treasured partner of ours at the High Desert Museum, and we have the honor of working with her and her staff on several projects. Elizabeth has a Master of Public Administration degree from Portland State University, a Bachelor of Arts in Humanities from Evergreen State College, and she studied creative writing and two-dimensional arts at the Institute of American Indian Arts in New Mexico. Liz has so many accolades. I'll share a few here before I let her take the floor for a reading. Her artistry in words extends to short fiction, essays, and poetry. She's written 3 books, Hand into Stone, for which she received the American Book Award in 1990, Luminaries of the Humble, which garnered the William Stafford Memorial Award for poetry and was a finalist for the Oregon Book Awards, and 7 Hands, 7 Hearts. In 2016, she was named the 8th Poet Laureate of the state of Oregon, and she is also a founding member of the Northwest Native American Writers Association, just to name a few. We are so grateful for Eliz's participation in the Waterston Desert Writing Prize as our guest judge this year. And here to share now is Elizabeth Woody. Elizabeth, I'll pass it over to you.
Sometimes your computer is your worst enemy. If you're meeting deadlines, you're writing that final paper, you're writing the Dear John letter. I don't know, it's sometimes beyond my abilities. I am going to talk a little bit tonight just simply about the pleasure it is working with the High Desert Museum, and of course to work in the past with other projects through the High Desert Museum with Ellen Waterston. The important thing for us to focus on with this particular award is about the ecosystem, the power of observation, the willingness to be immersed and actually caught up in the power and the fragility of the high desert. I'm going to read a poem tonight that's actually going to be from the coast, but the Pacific Ocean is part of the reason why we are the high desert. Its rain system stops in the Cascades. We're in call it the rain shadow of the Cascades. We have a greater region here that extends north and south because of those mountains into Baja California, up into British Columbia. The book that I'm going to read from tonight is called Living Nations, Living Words. And it was created by and with Joy Harjo, US Poet Laureate. And they have a website at the Library of Congress that has all of the poets in here included with a map of where they're originating from, as well as a recording. It's very nice. And I also think the companion book that Joy Harjo printed, the Norton Anthology of Native Nations Poetry, also is tied to the land. When the light of the world was subdued, our songs came through. They're guest editors. Beautiful cover. Any white horse did that. So in one of my past lives, my careers, I was the Indigenous Leadership Award creator at EcoTrust. And we worked with a lot of Indigenous leadership in what we call Salmon Nation. And Salmon Nation, they went inland to Montana and, believe it or not, into Nevada and Idaho because of the system of Pacific rivers along the Pacific, again down to Baja, and of course up into British Columbia and as far as the Yukon territories. I was visiting the coast with one of our leadership awardees, and they were launching or having actually a race between two traditional canoes that were carved by the Coquille people and the Coos. And they were having a race, race between two. Coquille, watching the traditional canoe. Like a sheep horn, brown and rustic, the canoe pitches to one side, takes water, with an exterior of finality, imaginatively halved. The cedar is quite old, half similar or half alien is a decision. The curl of the paddle motions on one side and its reverse, north and southern contrasts, seafaring parallels of the equator, akin to our navel above gender, reminiscent of central connections. A tree crest points to venerable lineage. One must accept oscillating internal realms, the tinder of fusion, kissing blossoms of recognition. Light and synthesis is sustenance and growth by these terms. What of weighted limbs of the hanged, the orphan children met from the momentous crux of fortune changing hands. A vigilant helix bends into tomorrow. Eastern rise of simple trill funnels into the high idioms of justice. They are survivors who know ropes of ideology, the carnage. Truly wild geese call out a black series of condolences, cadence of connection, and rote of mutual landing, patterned to triangles, gathering, and deltas. The geese travel to the points between testing each moment. Antiquity finds its anchor in turmoil. This is the forfeiture, solace, soft, compassionate wetlands, and the clarity of receiving drifts. It is the rain that mixes into heaps of leaves a disciplined, humid scent, shimmer of rippling bay, reaches for the bow of simple resurgence, brown symbolic float, affinity, in certain terms of reparation. And rather than explain to you at the beginning, I will explain to you now. We had just finished a tour on the coast from a scholar from the University of Oregon who was talking about the vigilantes of Oregon. And when they would get paid, they would go to the villages of Indian people and tie up the men and rape the women and children. And sometimes they would hang the men afterwards. And of course, one of the persons in that group was an ancestor of our Senator Packwood. And we were there at this village site and talking about that, and it was really concerning. And then we went to this town to go along some middens. It was in downtown of Coquille, near Coquille. And the police came by and stopped us because we were a group of Indian scholars, and we only had one person there who was white. And he wanted to know why we were there and what we were doing and how long would we be. And of course, you know that there's places on the coast that I as a child and as an adult could not go because of these prejudgments. But the beauty of the place and the beauty of endurance and the beauty of affinity and caring about our ancestry and about who we are and how we're actually forever together. It was important to look at the resurgence of culture, the resurgence of the voices to tell of our belief systems, of our connections. And that's what I think I found most, not appealing, it's not the right word, but kind of a compulsion to keep reading in these three persons that are being awarded tonight. They had a great deal to share. And unfortunately, the sad thing about prizes and about leadership awards and all of those things, there's always a partition that's drawn up when you have to make decisions. So the best investment, I think, is the way that they're doing here with all three of them and making sure that we understand and we're aware of their work. So thank you.
Thank you, Liz, so much for joining us tonight and for your reading and sharing the context behind it. It's always wonderful to be working with you. So thank you for being here. We are going to move along in the program, and we're going to start with readings by our two finalists before hearing from the winner of the prize this evening. And first, I'm so excited to introduce you to our finalist, Joe Wilkins. And I'm going to give a little bit of a context for Joe and his background. Joe now lives in Western Oregon on the wet side, but he was born and raised on a sheep and hay ranch in the Bull Mountains of Eastern Montana, part of the Big Dry, the Great Dry up there in the northern part of our desert region. He has an engineering degree from Gonzaga University and an MFA in creative writing from the University of Idaho. Today, he directs the creative program at Linfield University and serves on the faculty of Eastern Oregon University's low residency MFA program. Joe is the author of the novel Fall Back Down When I Die, which was shortlisted for the first novel from the Center for Fiction and the Pacific Northwest Book Award, and he won the 2020 High Plains Book Award. He also is the author of 4 poetry collections, most recently Thieve, a finalist for the Oregon Book Award, and When We Were Birds, winner of the Oregon Book Award. His poems, essays, and stories have appeared in a host of venues, including Orion, The Sun, and High Country News, and his work has won the Pushcart Prize, earned multiple notable mentions in the Best American series, and has been widely anthologized. As a writer, Joe says his early works were, and I quote, simply attempts to see and understand my own primal desert experience. The project linked to his 2021 Waterston Desert Writing Prize submission is about exploring the arid places of his Montana youth, tentatively titled Desert Reckoning, A Son of the High Plains Returns. We're thrilled to welcome you, Joe Wilkins, and I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Dana, and thanks, Heidi, and everyone at the High Desert Museum, and thanks so much, Ellen, for this vision. Thanks to Liz, Charles, Ceal. It's really fun to be doing this. I feel like I haven't had a chance to talk with other writers. We've been so far apart these last 2 years, and even if we're coming together digitally, it's still wonderful to be with one another for a moment and to share some words. So I'm going to read an essay that I think, you know, the project that I've submitted is very much still in process, but a newer essay that's coming out in the Sun here in a little bit that I think is going to be part of the project Dana just mentioned. It's called Old Friend. He once drank 13 cartons of milk in a single 20-minute lunch period. Another boy tried to match him the next day, but ended up sick all over his tray. I never saw anyone beat him at arm wrestling, not even his older brother, which stunned me, that you could beat your older brother at anything. He wore a stonewashed jean jacket. He parted his short brown hair sharply on the left and tucked his t-shirt into his jeans. He was fast and strong and a year and a half older than me. I wasn't cool or anything, not even that good at basketball. But when they first moved to town, he and his little sister in the same bus seat, him holding her hand, I sat in the seat in front of them, turned around after a time, said hi. When it was just the two of us, He liked to play pretend. That I was good at. Whether it was knights or ninjas or mountain men or space or Vietnam, he listened with his whole self, intent, leaned in to whatever story it was I was telling. He'd snug an imaginary rifle to his shoulder and belly himself down on the ridge. No matter what was coming through the far trees, he was ready. Before his family moved to our outpost Montana town, maybe 100 in the city limits, maybe the same on the farms and ranches scattered about, they'd lived out of lame deer. And all the years I knew him, he spoke with the soft, clipped cadences of the reservation, though he was whiter than me, his skin in a matter of minutes bricking in the sun. I remember a summer evening slicing aloe vera leaves with a pocket knife, rubbing the cool jelly onto his burning back. When he was in the 6th grade and I was in the 4th grade and his little sister was in the 2nd grade, she collapsed at recess. She had a different last name than he did, but she was his sister. To relieve the pressure, they had to cut a square out of her skull. Months later, after Christmas and everything, when she finally came back to school, you could see it. A soft, flat stretch of skin above and behind her ear. She stuttered and shook, her hair wispy, uneven. I sat down like I always did in the seat in front of them, and she wagged her finger at me. "I know you," she said, smiling her broken smile, her one eye a drooping moon. "I know you." One time, tromping around in the Badlands, we found a nest of mice. One time, we planned for weeks and snuck into the crawl space tunnels that ran underneath our school building. One time all day, we hammered and scrapped together a tree fort. One time, fireworks beneath the bridge. One time, Metallica on the boombox. One time, tattered copies of Hustler and Jugs. One time, Nick Thumbs and Blood. One time, the two of us sitting in the principal's office, dumb as rocks. One time, in sleeping bags, side by side and terrified, way up in the branches. One time, with a flat stone wide as a dinner plate, he crushed every squirming one. One time, though I told him not to, he dove to the very bottom of the muddy river, where rumor had it the Turley Boy's 66 Mustang waited in the depths. What would he swim back up with? A radio knob, a shard of mirror, some chrome. I was on the bank a long time alone. In the Facebook pictures, his hair is cut and parted in the exact same way. He still looks fast and strong, though clearly older, thicker, the skin along his jaw pocked here and there. He wears reflective sunglasses. His big arms are crossed over his chest. He leans against a jacked up pickup, Trump 2024 airbrushed across the sides. "Fuck your feelings" emblazoned on the hood. He just shared a memory of his first Facebook friend, his sister. Below that, there was a post about Greta Thunberg, more than one about Black Lives Matter. I bet you can imagine. After they moved away, this is 2 or 3 moves later, I think, his stepdad, the kind that never seemed to settle, I visited him for a week over the summer. We were older by then, beginning to grow our separate ways, but we swam in the irrigation canal, rode around on 4-wheelers. His girlfriend's cousin held my hand and even kissed me on the mouth, and his sister, her every step and word still and forever loose, trembling, cried all day about it. One afternoon, though his stepdad had told us to stay the hell away if we weren't going to help, we were messing around in the back of the grain truck, the wheat slowly funneling into the auger beneath. We were playing pretend again. I don't remember the story, but I'm sure I was the one telling it. We jump in, let the grain slip underneath our feet a moment, pool at our ankles, the wheat shifting and falling inexorably toward the center sinkhole, then pull ourselves up onto the trailer's crossbeams. We stayed a little longer each time, let our feet and calves and knees sink, moment by moment disappear. He reached up and grabbed a crossbeam and tried to haul himself out. He couldn't. I couldn't either. The wheat flowed and drifted and built around us. Soon we were up to our waists, our bellies and chests. We flailed and twisted and yelled for help, threw handfuls of grain over the sides, but no one saw. No one heard us. No one knew we were in there. The auger howled. We were both of us crying. I spit hot, dusty grain from my mouth. He reached down and got me by the armpits and pulled me up a fraction of an inch. The crush of wheat had pushed us closer together. So close, I could feel his breath on my forehead, the caves of my eyes. He told me to put my hands on his shoulders and push myself up. He was yelling at me to do it. So I did. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe, so much. We have members of the panel snapping for you in muted virtual world. It's been wonderful to share the evening with you, Joe, so thank you. Now, I'm pleased to introduce our second 2021 Waterston Desert Writing Prize finalist, Charles Hood. I'm going to talk about Charles for a minute before I pass it over to him. Charles grew up in Atwater beside the Los Angeles River and has been a bird guide in Africa, a translator in New Guinea, an art exhibition curator, a ski instructor, a factory worker, and a National Science Foundation artist in residence in Antarctica. He says he's a reformed birder, but having had a few conversations with Charles, I'm not so sure. He stopped after counting about 5,000 species, and he recently started a world mammal list. Charles has spent time in deserts across the globe, from the non-traditional desert of Antarctica. His dryland explorations have included most of the deserts in North America, plus the Atacama, the Gobi, and Kalahari deserts, as well as stays in Jordan, Egypt, Baja, and Namibia. He calls the Mojave Desert region home. Charles is the author of 16 books. A selection of his desert-centered work earned him the 2016 Felix Pollock Prize in Poetry, and Charles's book, South by South, was the 2013 Hollis Summers Prize winner, and his work, Mouth, earned the 2016 Kenneth Patchen Innovative Novel Prize. This is Charles's second time as a Waterston finalist, earning the honor in 2017 for his project titled Red Center. Charles's next book will be a collection of essays, A Salad Only the Devil Would Eat, The Joys of Ugly Nature. And now he'll share from his Waterston submission, Deserts After Dark. We're grateful to welcome back Charles Hood. Charles, over to you.
Hi, thank you, everybody. It's a great honor to be with us. And after listening to Joe, I'm a little hesitant and just say, can we go somebody else next, please? Because that's really not an act I feel like following. Yes, it is true that I have been in a lot of different deserts. And what happened with COVID is I had some trips planned and some books planned. And of course, all of our lives were altered. And I had to learn my local environment in a way that I hadn't really expected, but I'm very happy that I was able to do. So I live in the Antelope Valley. I'll talk about it in just a moment. And within a radius of my house, there's a walking route I can do that'll take me to both habited and uninhabited landscape. And in doing that walk daily with my dog, Lucy, whom you'll meet in a minute, I really began to appreciate deserts in a new sort of way. I do know in our audience, we have many writers, some of whom are my students. Hi, guys. So I want to remind everybody that I'm here really as your proxy, and I'm happy to be acknowledged as your proxy. The next winner is in the audience somewhere, if not for next year, then the year after or the year after that. And certainly of my students, I'm anticipating being in the audience and applauding when you are here on screen. So it is true, as was just mentioned, I have a book coming out. I don't know if I can hold up to the camera, almost got up to the camera. A Salad Only the Devil Would Eat, The Joys of Ugly Nature. Not out yet, but it's apparently on a boat coming from somewhere where the Magic Place books are made. For those of you remember the ship that was in the Suez Canal sideways, like 2 months ago, I was told by one of my publishers, there was like 5 authors had their entire world supply of books on the Evergreen that were not going to then reach American markets because the ship was in the Suez Canal. Luckily, that wasn't one of mine, as far as I know. And then the next book I'm doing after the essay book, 6 weeks after that, I have a book coming out that's a Reptile and Amphibian field guide. And so I proposed for the prize that I'd like to work on deserts after dark, animals and plants after dark. And that's a project then kind of on the event horizon. What I want to do is read from an essay that I've kind of collated from this book. I took a much longer essay and selected it down into just a little brief passage. So this is about my current home, and I'm happy to share it with you tonight. So this is my version of where I live, and hi to my students, it's where you guys live too. I live in the Antelope Valley on the western edge of the Mojave Desert. Rather than hosting the nomads of Burning Man or the architecture of John Lautner, my desert is more about the cars that don't run. All my neighbors have at least one, and mailboxes wallpapered with lost dog announcements. It has a bad rep, the Antelope Valley. Everything is a little bit beat up, a little bit second rate. The Antelope Valley is the place where old sofas crawl to the end of dirt roads to die. Fame touches us rarely, though Tom Selleck was part owner of a shopping plaza and came out to cut the ribbon. In the 1920s, Judy Garland's family had a house here. It later became a homeless shelter, and then it burned down. Frank Zappa grew up here, and that should count for something. But once he got out, he refused to come back, even when my college offered him a pile of money to come and give a single speech. In Africa, I was asked if the antelope in my valley were good to eat. Yes, they were. In fact, they were so good to eat, we ate them all. Even my dog Lucy was a rescue from the pound, and bless her, but she's a bit of a muddle. She's afraid of sneezes and all aspects of carrots. And as a corgi shepherd lemur mix, her legs are too short while her butt is too long. Due to various dental mishaps, she has fewer teeth than the average cast member in Tiger King. She can't decide if she wants to play with the pigeons or eat them, and any puddle, no matter how fetid, clearly exists only to be waded into and sampled deeply. If there's a passing siren, one must stop and howl. I'm expected to join in as well. And anything peed on during the outbound half of a journey has to be marked again twice as vigorously on the return leg, just to be sure the territorial claims have not gone stale in the intervening hour. She'd prefer some assistance from me in this, but she understands solidarity has its limits. Beauty, and I'm quoting now the philosopher Roger Scruton, beauty, quote, can be consoling, disturbing, sacred, profane. It can be exhilarating, appealing, inspiring, chilling, close quote. But beauty is rarely identified as being inherent to sticks, thorns, goat heads, or roadside weeds. In exploring our neighborhood each day, Lucy and I were surprised by how much beauty we did find. And we were surprised too by how quickly you can go from houses to non-houses and from closed systems to open ones, since in a car, one connects destinations point by point. I'm driving to the store now, often overlooking the blank places in between. In actuality, there are no blank places, only the unseen by us places. When T.S. Eliot promises to show us fear in a handful of dust, all I have to answer is that I can show him cigarette butts and bullet casings and bits of rusty wire in that same dust. And if you twist the wire into loops and add a few tarnished silver forks from the dump, you can make crazy good wind chimes. Some of the Joshua trees in my area wear prayer shawls in the form of shredded plastic bags. This is true. When my friends from the city complain about the trashy view, I tell them I have a ladder. They're welcome to go and tidy things up as much as they want. And true as well, many local Joshua trees have been burned black and gold by passing grass fires. And one Joshua tree that I called the Old Gentleman got knocked crooked by a drunk driver 10 or 12 years ago. Yet it grows still, a leaning tower of Pisa and fortitude, not giving up. It is hard work being alive for us as well as the plants. If you've made it this far, give yourself a round of applause. And hard too, looking at the work that still needs to be done, easy to get discouraged. As I write these words, somewhere there is a dog at the end of a chain, weary and harmed. As I write these words, somewhere a person is hungry while another person tries to wipe the blood off her face with the hem of her shirt. Yet, as I write these words, an oriole is building a nest in a thatched beard of an untrimmed palm tree, and it's letting me watch. As I write these words, a kind of bat called a pipistrelle, small and quick, celebrates sunrise and moonrise and sunset and moonset. As I write these words, water waits in a stream. As I write these words, marsh hawk. As I write these words, mule deer. As I write these words, quartz, obsidian, chert. As I write these words, owl's clover, chicory, lupin, globe mallow, evening snow. As I write these words, music and laughter. As I write these words, hidden nature, ugly nature, abandoned nature, holy nature. As I write these words, I have been walking a long time, but I am finally arriving, and it feels good to be home. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charles. It's been delightful sharing the evening with you and for your reading this evening, and congratulations on being a Waterston finalist. And now I am very pleased to introduce the winner of this year's Waterston Desert Writing Prize, Ceal Klingler. Ceal was born in the Mojave Desert and has lived at the southernmost edge of the Great Basin for 24 years. She has a bachelor's degree in linguistics and psychology, a master's in biology, and describes herself as a writer, biologist, conservationist, and devoted terrestrial mammal. I can identify with that as well. This has led to roles as copy editor, biologist, and I quote, an analyst and critic of diabolically bureaucratic environmental impact documents. Her creative nonfiction has appeared in publications including the High Country News, The Sun, Backpacker, Natural History Magazine, and Orion. For her winning submission this year, Ceal shared from her book project titled How We Live with Each Other. She notes the project is in part a love letter to my wild neighbors, and it inspires wonder, thought, and gratitude for them as well. As the winner of this year's Waterston Prize, Ceal is the recipient of a $2,500 award and enviably a 2-week stay at Playa, the art and science residency organization on the edge of beautiful Summer Lake in Oregon's high desert. Congratulations, Ceal. We no doubt all want to go with you. And now I'm honored to welcome Ceal Klingler.
Thank you, Dana. Can I just say it's really hard to read last after this amazing company. I am really glad to meet everybody, even if only virtually. And I feel incredibly honored and grateful to have been selected for the Waterston Desert Writing Prize and to be in such good company. So my heartfelt thanks to everybody here, whether that's at the museum or online. Tonight, I'm going to read a section of my submission, part of a nonfiction mystery regarding a small desert fish, how we live with them, and how they survive or don't survive with us. But before I start reading, I'd like to acknowledge that for 24 years, I've lived in Pyle, the land of flowing water, the homeland of the Numu and Newe people. And I would also like to thank them and all of my friends and neighbors, because without them, I might have a place to live, but I almost certainly would not have a home. In March 2018, we meet after dark to spotlight largemouth bass. My husband carries a sleek, wide experimental underwater drone. Steve Parmenter, an aquatic conservation biologist with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, carries a 3-foot-long JBL 38 special spear gun. Earlier today, he replaced the black rubber bands on the spear gun that drive the spear, a short, cruel-looking stainless steel trident on a tether. I carry a mundane headlamp and disappointingly standard industrial gray crutches, which more accurately carry me. In the bobbing light from my headlamp, we work our way across a lumpy alkali meadow and stop at a spring pool. Steve fades into rushes to the west. I wedge my crutch tips on scruffy saltgrass and turn my headlamp to the blue-green water. My husband leans down, slips the drone into the spring pool, and pilots it from shore. In minutes, a green bass shimmers in the drone's headlights. "Stay where you are," we tell Steve, blinding him as we find him with our headlamps. Then, "No, wait, come back to this side." We didn't come here for freshwater spearfishing, ordinarily illegal in California, or to wipe our noses as they clog with alkali dust, or to listen to the slurping noises the drone makes when algae clogs its thrusters. We're here on behalf of the bass's victims, Owen's pupfish, Sonita impayut, Cyprinodon radiosus in textbooks. Small, critically endangered fish the bass has been steadily eating. Just as a river of migratory birds once flowed across Owens Valley skies, a river of Owens pupfish, millions of them, once flowed through the valley's waters. They crowded more than 100 miles of the lower Owens River, wriggled through marshes, and silvered Paiute irrigation and aquaculture canals below the eastern Sierra Nevada mountains. By the night of our spearfishing expedition, After more than 2 million years of eluding extinction, Sonita now brighten only 5 small isolated pools and marshes, less than a quarter acre in all. The pool where we're spotlighting bass, the most productive site, hosted thousands of pupfish until the bass arrived. Lately, we haven't seen any pupfish. Tonight could make the difference between too late and just in time. Imagine a small, stocky male Owens pupfish, 2 inches long. In early spring, a mature male pupfish's silver scales darken into vertical bands of deep blue, the color of desert skies just before twilight. He patrols his territory, a globe of water about the size of a child's beach ball. He floats in a larger cloud of males, all guarding their own spheres and pausing to display their fins at each other and at smaller brown dappled female pupfish who cruise past or pause sometimes to look. Now drop a largemouth bass, let's say a foot long, although they sometimes reach twice that, into the spheres. A male pupfish guarding his territory darts forward. The bass opens its jaws. Water rushes to fill the vacuum, pulling the pupfish into the bass's maw. The bass's jaws close. This is how some species go extinct, one mouthful at a time. Steve hasn't asked, he's barely said a word, but will stay until the bass dies. The well-being of Cyprinodon radiosus shouldn't dance on the tines of a trident. Steve and his colleagues have rescued other endangered fishes without resorting to spears. The Owens Valley Bishop Paiute tribe has created a sanctuary pond on their reservation for Owens pupfish. Small, sturdy Cyprinodon fishes like Sonita persist in ridiculous conditions. Hot water, concentrated salt, low oxygen. By comparison, temperatures and salt concentrations in Owens Valley waters are benign. Then too, Owens pupfish are the sort of fish people might miss when they go missing. Females and males have pouting lips and large pupils. Their eyes pivot visibly when male pupfish turn broadside to each other and raise their sails. Even though they often harass other fishes, large and small, we bipeds interpret pupfish body language as personable. Owens pupfish were among the first 75 species to receive protection in 1967 under the Endangered Species Preservation Act. Nevertheless, for more than 50 years, and in spite of their best efforts, Steve and his predecessors have kept Owens pupfish only a few pools and buckets ahead of extinction. All pupfish need to reproduce is a place to, well, do it. Why haven't they? The answer lies on the Bishop Paiute Reservation nearby and in the city of Los Angeles, hundreds of miles south. It lies in the Sierra Nevada and the White Mountains to our west and east, and in the ground beneath alfalfa farms to our north. The answer lies in who we are, what we value, and even in how we treat our pets. The answer is slippery as a river full of fish. I'm just going to put that up there for a minute so that you can see the male pupfish are the large blue ones. The females will dart in whenever the males spar. Before John C. Fremont decided the Owens Valley's name ought to recall someone who didn't live there, the Paiutes, Numu, named it Paiu-Nadu, or land of flowing water. On paper, the amount of water that falls directly from the sky to the valley floor, usually between 4 to 7 inches a year, classifies the Owens Valley as a desert. In the real world, the valley acts more like a marsh. The uplifted Sierra Nevada range casts a rain shadow, but snowmelt and runoff from the southeastern slopes eventually filled the valley below, creating abundant springs, a lush green scatter of desert wetlands, a wide, knotted river, and as surrounding mountains rose and glaciers withdrew, the Owens Lake, Patsiata, a saline lake that served as a stopover point for avocets, cinnamon teal, white-faced ibises, grebes and godwits, willets and whimbrels, phalaropes, plovers and pipers, and hundreds of thousands of other birds breeding at the lake or migrating in a flood of feathers and rushing wings across the Mojave and Great Basin deserts. Entire groundwater-dependent ecosystems have evolved in the quiet basins of Eastern California's deserts, plants, animals, and other organisms that depend on reliable water from the ground up, rather than from the sky down. These plant and animal escape artists have dodged or endured drought, floods, heat, lava, and isolation. Silt black toads who overwinter underground, emerge in spring sun, and turn nocturnal as temperatures rise. Tiny voles who abide in the green hearts of marshes. Spring snails who huddle in shallow water rising from perennial desert springs. And desert fishes, all residents of small islands of water, marsh, or plants, separated by sand, stone, heat, and dry. And I'm just going to leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ceal. That was lovely, and thank you for sharing the video of our pupfish this evening. In our time remaining together, I'm going to pass it over to Ellen to lead some questions and answers with our finalists and winner. Over to you, Ellen.
Anybody good at lip reading? What I said was thank you for wonderful, wonderful readings. And again, congratulations to Ceal, Charles, and Joe. I have a few questions, and I don't know if there are others coming through this evening. Dana, please feel free to jump in anytime. Shall I lead off?
Yes, please go ahead. We do have, well, actually, if I can put in one question so far from our audience, and this is for Ceal. Did the pupfish survive the bass?
About 1 dozen pupfish were left after the bass. And now there are thousands again, and we just finished hunting for another set of bass. So it's a cyclical. It's never a certain thing.
Thank you. Ellen, go ahead.
So, well, Joe, I'll start with you. I just want to thank you for bearing unapologetic and exacting witness to the language, the mores and ways of ranching in those times. As I mentioned earlier in the day, this wonderful riff, my grandfather, whose crib was a shoebox on a wood stove, who sat on the jug with his daddy when his daddy ran whiskey, who's broke 1,000 horses and been struck by lightning twice, does not care that this young author now was kind of a school kid, did well in school, but grandpa was okay with that. But they just, and another wonderful thing, that his grandfather at a certain time cowboyed under another man's brand. As somebody who ranched for, I don't know, 3 decades all told, I love hearing this language, and I love the respect that you pay to it. I appreciate the mosaic that I think you're going to be creating in this proposed book, Desert Reckoning. Returning to Montana's Big Dry of your youth with your children, according to your proposal, as well as reenacting some of your earlier, even folkloric experiences. And so my question to you is, in the world of today, in the Big Dry of today, what do you hope your children take away from this exploration? What do you hope the reader takes away from it? And you, what about you?
That's a great question. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to answer all of it, but hopefully I can at least gesture in that direction. I think earlier in the day when we were talking, we talked a little bit about this great division in our contemporary politics, our contemporary culture between the urban and the rural, and especially after the 2016 election, we saw so many think pieces in magazines situated on the East Coast or the West Coast about, what's wrong with the center of the country? What's wrong with rural America? What's going on there? Why are they, and I'm paraphrasing here, but so backwards? So, why are they doing this to themselves? There's plenty of valid points to be made in many of those pieces. I'm not disagreeing with much of the analysis. But I do think sometimes the way it was structured rubbed me the wrong way. And I just kept thinking, you know, instead of asking what's wrong, maybe we need to ask, what can we learn? What did we miss? What have we not seen? What are we not understanding? Much of my work, much of my writing has been trying to understand, you know, my growing up years in the Big Dry of Montana. And as someone who's lived longer now away from those years than I lived those years, I lived till I was 19 years old there, and now I'm 43, so I'm over the midway point. I feel this sense of a loosening connection. And I especially think about that with my own children, again, where I'm living here in the Willamette Valley, the Big Wet. And it's a wonderful place. We do really love it. But I also want my children to be connected to landscape in a different way than camping and hiking. I want them to be connected to the landscape in a way in which it's part and parcel of your everyday, part and parcel of the way you make your way through a life. And so the proposal I'm working on, I hope I might relearn some lessons. I'm sure I've forgotten so many things. I hope I might start to understand some of the reasons for the divisions, or if not the reasons, the ways those divisions have manifested themselves in my own life between those years there and the years away, and that my children might touch for a moment some of what I did as a young man. One of the things that we hope to do is go stay with friends who still ranch in the Yellowstone Valley and stay through lambing season. And it's I don't know if you've never had livestock and never, you know, been somewhere during calving season or lambing season, or maybe it's similar to as the pupfish are being born, that sense of that closeness to another thing, that care, that wonder. And so I'm really excited to do that, to bring them there, to see it, to sort of meet these others in a much more intimate way. I hope that answers some of your question, Ellen. That's a great question.
No, it certainly does. It's a very exciting undertaking, and it touches on the issue of the urban rural. I mean, really, in the end, we all love with great energy and enthusiasm the same things, but in such different ways. And I think you're doing a lot of good work to show that they're both valid in their own right. So thank you for that, and thank you for that answer. And speaking of Joe's comment about, and again, interrupt me, Dana, or anybody really, if you want to jump in, but Joe's mentioning about what can we learn about what's right, and so much of Charles is your message is just that, you know, making wind chimes out of sort of the shrapnel of the neighborhood, or just that all of it's holy, all of it really is part of nature, right? Humans are part of nature, and so the nature of us humans, as we write human nature across everything. So I just want to acknowledge, Charles, how I felt so lifted in the sort of description of what's tough stuff, that there's beauty to be found and hope to be found, and good reason for it. So thank you for that. I want to read an excerpt from your proposal, Deserts After Dark. I quote, "If deserts themselves are misunderstood, so too are the nocturnal sciences. Otherwise, rational people are afraid of bats, think spiders are icky, or feel the need to surround their house with floodlights and security alarms. I want to change that. Let's turn off the fear and the spotlights and start to enjoy the other half of nature, the part that lives and breeds and thrives and howls after the sun goes down." So I just wondered if you had a sort of recommendation for novices as to how to begin to explore what you refer to as the desert's crepuscular world. And maybe touch on some of the many miracles of the desert you discovered at night in the work that you're doing.
So we know that nature is all around us, and we know that the urban rural distinction is a false one, but after dark, nature wins. If even in central Los Angeles, I mean, we're talking the urban core of the enemy city. Hi, Ceal, the people that want to drink your water, and if there's like fish sucked into the pipe, so much the better. But in the middle of Los Angeles, after 10 p.m. and until 5 a.m., the coyotes are coming out, and we can hear them, we can see them. The possums are out, the raccoons are out. P22, the puma that lives in Griffith Park, comes out. And so one thing I like to do when I'm leading a night walk is just to bring a little bat detector. It plugs into my mobile phone, my cell phone, and just say, guess what's happening just 100 meters over our head? And we can just, it makes the, for those who haven't used one, it's like a little microphone that plugs into your cell phone, and it does a little seismograph, does a little readout of the calls, and it makes them audible if you turn the setting right. So clickety, clickety, click, you can realize, well, wait, there's a bunch of bats right here. There are 23 species of bats in the state of California that have been recorded, and this includes downtown San Francisco and downtown Los Angeles. They are all around us. So the idea is like just letting people realize, hey, it's right nearby. I've been by bats all my life, and it's not that scary once I kind of acknowledge that. And then the little $10 UV flashlight so you can see a scorpion. Everybody, they think, oh, icky, but once they actually look at them and they realize they can find them themselves, the look for arachnids with the spotlight kind of thing is really a great introductory method to get people to realize, hey, this nature is right nearby and it's yours to go look at.
Yeah, it's just, it's the gift that keeps on giving if we'll simply open ourselves to it, night or day. So thank you ever so much for reminding us of wherever we are, there's just so much to get to know, as Ceal encourages, get to know, and by knowing, we'll care for it, right? Robert Michael Pyle, I often quote him as his wonderful statement, which is, what is the loss of a condor to a child who has never known the wren? So it's high time. It's high time we know what's moving in our worlds at night and during the day as well. I'm going to make time. I just have one more question for Ceal. First of all, congratulations again. And I so admire your ability to incorporate data, history, science, supported by such a lively, smart, and colorful style of writing. So brava to you. From your proposal, you do mention that this project is in part a love letter to my wild neighbors, but because they'll never read it, I hope it's more than that. I hope my project will help shift conversations in literature from what North America's deserts do for us and what we do there, to a conversation about how all desert denizens function together at the edge of survival, us included. That's not her language, I'm just adding that. And we risk losing as deserts migrate north. So her concluding sentence there is, I hope this project will inspire wonder, thought, and gratitude. I hope it will inspire change. Now, I know this question was addressed to you earlier in the day, but I'd like to ask again, what is the change you see? What is the change you hope for?
Much of the change is first in inspiring wonder in people so that they have a chance to be grateful for what we already have and how much we all depend on the kindness of strangers. I'm borrowing a phrase from a biologist who was talking about the organisms in the ocean that enable us to breathe. And I hope that wonder, and in turn, the gratitude that springs from it, will inspire us to look deeper at the fact that we are basically all holobionts. We're collections of organisms. The organisms in our guts come from those not so icky, really gorgeous scorpions. They come from every animal in our environment. And we are much healthier when we have more organisms in our environment. So I'm really hoping that, that by just giving people the chance to wonder and to be grateful, that they will then, and this is really optimistic of me, but I'm hoping they will then be more compassionate and more curious, and that they'll be inspired to learn more, and in turn protect what we've already got, be grateful for what we have, instead of trading it for something else that that has no future.
Yeah, it's just so critically important, and really in so many, you know, as was said earlier today, your voices and your approach are so different, but really the impetus and the hope is really the same. It's sort of, you know, can't y'all just get along? I mean, can't we just see the beauty in everything around us and everyone around us? I love the notion of the kindness of strangers. What is that? Is it Blanche in Streetcar Named Desire who said, I've always relied on the kindness of strangers? Well, so are we. I probably totally botched that. I don't think it was Stella who said it, but anyway, I'm so invigorated. I'm just so invigorated and encouraged, more hopeful as a result of this evening together, the readings you've provided, the work that you're doing. And Liz, for your reading, thank you ever so much again for being part of this evening. I'm just feeling full of gratitude to all of you right now. Thank you ever so much for participating in the Waterston Desert Writing Prize. And Dana, I will turn this back to you.
Thank you, everybody, so much for spending the evening with us, celebrating the literary arts and creating a virtual community this evening. I certainly have felt the spirit of humanity among us, and I really appreciate that. Thank you once again, Ceal, Charles, and Joe, Liz Woody, our guest judge. Thank you for joining us, to Ellen Waterston and the Waterston Advisory Committee. And many, many thanks to all of you for joining us for the 2021 Waterston Desert Writing Prize. For the lovers of literary events, please stay tuned to the High Desert Museum's website and social media for future opportunities. We look forward to hosting another celebration of the literary arts. Be well, have a lovely evening, and we hope to see you soon. Have a great night.